do.
Thank you. Please have a seat in the witness stand. And for the record, say and spell your first and last name, please.
It's Joe Anaya, Joeanaya.
Thank you. Sir, can you tell us how it is that you're employed, please?
I'm employed as a detective with the Los Angeles Police Department, and in April it'll be 27 years.
Where are you assigned?
I'm currently at Mission Area Detectives.
That's in the San Fernando Valley.
Correct.
Directing your attention back to 2017, do you recall how you were assigned at that point in time?
Yes, I was at Gang Narcotics Division, working the Gang Field Unit, a surveillance apprehension team.
And how many years were you assigned to G&D?
Approximately 7.5 years.
Okay. I want to direct your attention to the date of February 21st of 2017. Were you part of an undercover surveillance operation that evening?
I was.
And were you working with your supervisor, Detective Rich Jaramillo, as well as Detective Andy Chang, who just testified?
Yes, I was.
And on that particular evening, were you directed to follow particular targets?
Yes.
Was one of them Monica Sementilli?
Yes.
Do you see her here in court today?
I do.
Can you identify her, please?
She's wearing a blazer, seated at the defense table.
Indicating the defendant.
Was there also another individual that you were asked to follow?
Yes, it was Robert Baker.
Showing you what's been previously marked as People's 14, were you shown a photograph of this individual?
Yes, that's him, Robert Baker.
There appears to be a number 2 in the bottom left corner.
Yes.
Now, had you also previously followed the defendant to a Ford dealership on February 16th of 2017?
Yes, I did.
Did you use the vehicle trackers that have been placed on the defendant's vehicle on February 16th of 2017 in order to find her along with Baker on February 21st of 2017?
Yes, I did.
Showing you Exhibit 141 that has a number 1 in the bottom left corner. Is this the vehicle that you saw on February 16th and that you were looking for again on February 21st?
That is the vehicle. I don't see the one on the bottom, but yes, that's the vehicle.
The vehicle is the
The Ford F-150.
Ford F-150 along with the license plate?
Correct.
At some point in time on the night of February 21st, did you find the defendant's black Ford F-150 that we just looked at?
Yes.
Okay. And when you saw her vehicle that night, did you also call Detective Parshall to alert him?
Correct.
All right. How are you dressed on the night of February 21st?
I was wearing civilian clothing. Normally I'd wear just regular attire, jeans, t-shirt.
Okay. And were you also driving an unmarked vehicle that night?
I was.
The first time that you saw the defendant on the night of February 21st, where was that?
That was on Melrose at 7230 Melrose at the Parlor Restaurant at approximately 8:50 p.m.
Is that 7250 Melrose?
It could have been 7250 on the corner.
Let me ask you this. Looking at Exhibit 143 that has a 5 in the bottom left corner, is this the location that you responded to on February 21st?
That's it.
Did you go inside that location?
I did.
When you went inside, did you join Detective
I did.
And was that in the bar area?
Yes, it was in the bar.
Showing you exhibit 143 that has a 6 in the left corner. Looking at the photograph to the left, is that the area where you joined Detective Chang?
It looks familiar, yes.
Showing you exhibit 143 that has a 7 in the bottom left corner. Is this what you observed with respect to the defendant and Baker when you went into that location that night?
Yes.
Now, at some point, did you follow them to another location?
Yes, to 442 North Fairfax in the city of Los Angeles.
And what location was that at the time?
That was the Dime Dive Bar. That's what it was called, the Dime Dive Bar.
Showing you exhibit 144, these two photographs appears to have a number 9 in the bottom left corner. Is this the location you followed them to?
That's it.
Okay. And when you followed them to this particular location, did you go inside or did you stay outside?
I stayed outside. I parked across the street and maintained visual on the front door.
Okay. You said you were the point person?
I was a point person monitoring the front of the location.
Approximately what time did the defendant and Baker arrive at this location?
Approximately 10 p.m.
Okay. And about 30 minutes later, did you make some other observations?
I did. The defendant exited the front door of the parlor bar onto Fairfax.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense will object as irrelevant, cumulative, based on Detective Lerner's discussion of this already in testimony, and improper character.
Overruled.
Go ahead.
I saw her exit the front door. She sat down at the bench area that's in front of the location there. And the
Location here, the bench that
Correct.
we see in the photographs to the right, like a wooden bench.
that's it right there.
Okay.
She sat down, and at some point he appeared to be a security guard / host, male black, about 40 years old, walked up to her. They sat down next to her. They talked, and their interaction lasted about 10 minutes as she smoked a cigarette.
I'm sorry?
As she smoked a cigarette.
And as she was smoking a cigarette, you saw her talking to the security guard or bouncer?
Yes.
And what did you see, if anything, her do?
Objection, irrelevant, improper character evidence, and cumulative.
I believe I ruled on this. Again, it's overruled.
Go ahead.
What I saw was them talking. She began to use her right hand, and as he sat to the right of her, she began to caress his inner left thigh.
Okay. Did you see her doing anything else with respect to this bouncer?
Yes, she used her right hand and began to rub the back of his neck.
Was that while she was speaking with him?
Correct.
And did you see what she did next?
She initiated a passionate kiss on his lips.
Okay. How long did that go on for?
The kiss was approximately 4 seconds.
Okay. And what, if anything, did she do after that?
She went inside.
When she came out from the bar to have this cigarette and you saw this interaction with the bouncer, was she alone or with someone else?
She was alone.
What was the next thing that you saw from your vantage point?
About 10:53, Robert Baker came out alone. He went to the valet to retrieve the pickup truck, the F-150, and then he drove to the rear alley, and my team advised me that he was trying to find a parking spot in the rear alley.
Okay. And at some point were you advised that he went back inside the bar?
Correct. He went inside the bar, out of view for about an hour.
Okay. Somewhere around 12 a.m. midnight?
Correct.
Did you see something else?
I did not see. I was advised by my team, Detective Whitney, that they re-entered the pickup truck. Baker was driving. The defendant was in the front passenger seat. And at that point, we resumed our surveillance in the vehicles and followed them.
When you said they, are you referring to the defendant and Robert Baker?
Correct.
Okay. And were you advised that they came out from the back door and then entered the defendant's vehicle?
Correct.
And did you see where Baker drove at that point?
Yes, we followed the vehicle. They didn't make any stops to the 10 freeway, then to the 405 North transition. And at that point, Baker exited the Ventura exit off of the 405 freeway that kind of drops you off onto Sepulveda Boulevard.
Okay. So now we're talking about any observation at this point is on February 22nd of 2017, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And did you observe him stop the vehicle at some point?
Yes, he came to an abrupt stop in the mobile parking lot at 4528 Sepulveda Boulevard. And then he immediately got out of the vehicle, slammed the door, and briskly walked away eastbound on Dickens Street.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 145. Do you recognize what you see here?
Yes.
Is this the mobile station that you followed the defendant and Baker to?
Yes.
And when you said he stopped in the driveway, is this the driveway area?
It was more onto the flat surface in the mobile, like where the blacktop is at. To your left a little bit, right around there.
And did you see where he parked the vehicle?
It was right where your finger last was.
Okay. Showing you Exhibit 145. The one we were pointing to was 145. It has an 11 in the bottom left corner. Now I'm pointing to 145 that has a 12 in the bottom left corner.
Okay.
Does this photograph, these two photographs depict the location where eventually he parked the Ford F-150?
No, the other one showed where he parked. Later on, she moved the car, which was what you were showing me. But right here on this photo
Yes.
is where he stopped in the middle of the pumps, a little bit to your right, around that area right there. Correct.
Okay. So at some point, after you saw him get out of the vehicle from the driver's side, did you see what the defendant did?
The defendant, later on, she moved the vehicle to that other spot that you showed me.
Looking at 145 with the 12 in the bottom left corner.
Correct.
Is this the location where the defendant then parked her vehicle?
Yes, where that blue car approximately would have been.
Okay, showing you Exhibit 145 that has a number 13 in the bottom left corner. Just to orient us, the area that I'm pointing to in the bottom left corner, would that be the same area that we see in 145, page 12?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And so you observed the defendant get into the driver's seat and move the vehicle to this particular location as we see in Exhibit 145, page 13?
No, I didn't make that observation.
You were advised of that by others in your unit?
Correct. I maintained surveillance on Mr. Baker.
Okay. And did you see where Mr. Baker went?
Yes, he kept walking eastbound on Dickens and through the neighborhood there. Very quiet, small street. And then eventually he kept walking very briskly to a north direction and ended up on Ventura Boulevard.
And what did you do at that point in time?
I continued to follow him with the team. We conducted a rolling surveillance and maintained a visual on him. And he walked quite a ways. I would say at least a mile or so.
And when you said you had a rolling surveillance, that means you're passing off point between the individuals in your unit at that point?
Correct. Just to minimize your exposure to your target,
Okay.
you just kind of leapfrog and let the target come to you as you're parked, and you're trying to minimize exposure to that target and minimize exposure.
As Baker was walking, what did you see him do, if anything?
I saw him on his cell phone, It was dark, and I could see his cell phone lighting up, and he was talking on it from approximately 6 to 8 inches. He held the phone away, so I assumed he was on his speakerphone.
Can you describe the phone?
One of the phones I saw was a large square type smartphone, and the other one was a flip style cell phone.
Okay, so you saw him using two different phones?
Correct.
Okay. And did you follow him to a particular location?
I did. I went back to check on the defendant. In between that time, we were going back and forth between both targets, but I did eventually make the call to go back to see what the defendant was doing.
Okay. And when you went back to see the defendant, was she in the still in the driver's seat at this point after moving the car?
Yes, it was after she had moved the car to that spot off of Saugus. That side street is to the east is Saugus, and she was parked where the inner car was. I was parked right next to her, to the left of her.
Okay. And did you have any windows in your vehicle down at that point?
I did. I had my right passenger window open, which was the window closest to her window.
That would be her driver's window.
Correct.
And could you hear what she was doing?
Yes, she was crying uncontrollably. She was using her cell phone and looking down at it. I remember her saying, "I'm so stupid," and repeating that 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
And she was continuously crying.
Do you know if she was speaking into the cell phone at that point in time?
She appeared to be, yes.
Okay. Could you hear her speaking?
I could.
Okay. After that, did you go back to a bus stop location?
Yes, I determined to stop the surveillance on the defendant and just focus on Baker since he was walking around. At this point, he was on Van Nuys walking northbound on Van Nuys Boulevard from Ventura.
Okay. And did you see what he did there?
Yes, he eventually got onto an MTA bus and took the bus north on Van Nuys Boulevard to Oxnard, and at that point is where he got off the bus.
And-
It
I'm
wasn't
sorry.
that far,
Okay.
but he jumped on and then jumped off about 2 majors later.
Okay. And what did you see him do at that point, if anything?
He began to walk back towards the direction he came from, which was southbound on Van Nuys, and then eventually he came to a stop at the southeast corner of Burbank Boulevard and Van Nuys. There's a bus stop there, and I think that's also a mobile gas station.
And at that same time, as he was walking, did you see whether he was using his phones again?
Yes, he was using his phones and talking on 2 different phones.
And what did you see him do next, if anything?
At that time, eventually I was alerted by a teammate that a cab company, United Cab, picked up Baker and proceeded to drive away.
And did you follow Baker in the cab?
I did. I made the determination to have myself and Detective Whitney to go ahead of the surveillance to try to get there before he did, and guessed that he would be returning to the area of Salem Street. And at that point, I was able to get to that street before the cab arrived at that street at the corner of Salem and Central in the city of Glendale.
And did you see Mr. Baker get out of the cab?
I did.
And did you see where he went?
Yes, I followed him on foot. I got off of my vehicle, and I followed him from across the street, followed him to 331 Salem. I don't know if it's street or avenue.
Okay. And did you see him go into that apartment building?
Yes, I did. After he used the intercom to try to get buzzed in, it appeared as he waited for a few minutes, and at that point he must have gotten buzzed in. He opened the door, and he went out of my view into the Veteran Village apartments.
Okay. Is that the location, the Veteran Village apartments that we see in Exhibit 146 that has a number 3 in the bottom left corner?
Correct, that's the place.
Okay. Approximately what time was that?
It was at approximately 2:30 p.m.
In the morning on February 22nd?
Correct, 2:30 a.m.
Thank you, I have nothing further.
Make Ross.
Thank you, Ron. Detective Anaya, I think I just heard you say that you, when you were following Mr. Baker at the end of your testimony, you had assumed he was going back to the Salem address, and that's how you knew where to go?
Correct.
So you already knew where Mr. Baker was residing?
No.
Well, why did you assume he was going back to that address?
Because earlier in the day, around 8 o'clock p.m. on the 21st, is when I was monitoring the GPS tracker on the defendant's truck. Mm-hmm. I saw that she was headed in an easterly direction, and at that point, I figured she might meet up with Mr. Baker.
Okay, I'm curious. I'm sorry, I'm going to let you
I'm
finish.
sorry, I should have continued. So then when I was monitoring the cell phone and getting the team together to conduct our operation, I continued monitoring the phone, and I saw that she had stopped in the area of Salem and Central in that vicinity of the 300 block of Salem.
Okay, so you had actually surveilled Ms. Sementilli earlier that same day?
No. I was using the electronic device and monitoring her activity from there.
Okay.
So that kind of surveillance, yes, but not physical.
Okay, so you don't know if Robert Baker was driving the truck or Ms. Sementilli was driving the truck. All you knew was from the tracker that the truck was at that location, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And had you surveilled Ms. Sementilli prior to February 21st?
I did.
Okay, on how many occasions?
Just on the 16th of February, a few days before.
Okay, and that was the only time before the 21st?
Yeah, I can remember that was the only time on the 16th.
Okay, and how about after the 21st? On how many occasions did you surveil Ms.
None that I
Sementilli?
could remember.
Okay, and am I correct that the way that you write down anything you feel is important from this surveillance is you wrote, in this case, a chronological log. Is that correct?
I did.
Okay. And you did it specifically for what you observed on February 21st that you felt was important?
Yes, that I felt was important, that was relayed to me either through my team or from my own observations, correct.
Got it. Okay. And am I right that when you first observed on the 21st, seeing Robert Baker and Monica Sementilli, Robert Baker was driving that truck, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And you observed him drive that truck to this parlor bar, is that right?
I just observed him in front of the parlor bar. I didn't see him drive up to it.
Okay.
That's when I first spotted them, was at the parlor bar.
Okay. And did you surveil him getting out of the vehicle?
Yes.
And he got out of the driver's side of the vehicle?
Yes.
Okay. And then you testified earlier, we don't have to go through it, but you were there approximately 30 minutes and saw the two of them inside, correct?
Correct.
And then you saw them leaving, and did you observe them leaving at the valet?
I did.
Okay. And you saw them engaged in a kiss?
I did from the inside of the establishment. They had a large window, and I was inside. They were outside. I had a clear, unobstructed view of both of them hugging and both of them kissing multiple times.
Got it. Okay. And then you followed them over to this establishment, the Dime?
Correct.
Okay. And let me ask you a question. This occurrence you testified about, seeing Monica come out of the establishment, and I think you described her having some interaction with this African-American gentleman.
Yes,
You observed that,
I did.
and you were able to see clearly what occurred, correct?
Yes.
And am I correct? How long was that event? How long between the time she came out of the establishment and smoked a cigarette and had some kind of interaction to when she went back in? To the
Approximately 10 minutes.
Okay. And am I correct that at no time during that entire 10 minutes you saw the things you saw? Did you ever see Robert Baker?
Not during that time.
Okay. You never saw him anywhere in the vicinity outside?
No.
And you never saw him anywhere in the vicinity inside the bar? You were not inside the bar?
Correct. None of us were inside.
Okay. And Detective, after you followed Mr. Baker driving the truck with Ms. Sementilli inside, you testified about seeing him stop the vehicle at this mobile gas station, right?
Yes.
And you saw him slam the door and storm away.
Yes.
Okay. And the next time you ever saw Mr. Baker was heading towards this residence in the Veterans Village, correct?
No. I followed him immediately from when he left the truck and continued to follow him while he was on foot and I was in my vehicle.
Okay. But you followed him as he was headed towards the Veterans Village?
Not necessarily. That eventually happened. But in between, about an hour and a half worth of him walking to Van Nuys Boulevard, northbound, got onto a bus, like I mentioned previously.
Right.
And then jumping on the bus, getting off the bus, walking back. That took well over an hour for all that to happen. And then eventually is when the cab picked him up. And then he proceeded to Salem and Glendale.
Got it. I wasn't clear, and I apologize.
No, sorry.
I wasn't, he didn't go any other location other than between where you first saw him after he left the truck and Valley Village. He didn't make any other stops.
Not to talk to anybody, if that's what you're insinuating. He didn't talk to anybody, he didn't stop anywhere else. He did the things I had previously mentioned, though.
He took the bus, then he took the cab and
Correct.
went to Valley Village.
Correct.
Okay, now. Am I correct that you testified that you saw from very close up, sitting right beside Miss Sementilli, her crying uncontrollably?
Yes.
Okay. And that was because you pulled into a parking space, I think you described it as a stall, right beside Miss Sementilli?
Correct.
And at this point, she was no longer in the passenger seat, she was in the driver's seat, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And Detective, you specifically, when you pulled in, you were there monitoring Monica Sementilli, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you were parked immediately to the left of her?
Yes.
Okay. And her window was down and your window was down?
That is correct.
Okay. And you could both see and hear her crying uncontrollably?
Yes.
And she wept in a very loud manner?
Yes.
And she wept for approximately 20 minutes?
I would say about 20 minutes.
Okay. And you also said that while she was weeping and crying uncontrollably, she said a couple of times, "I'm so stupid, I'm so stupid."
Yeah, at least a few times.
But you weren't sure, you saw a phone, but you weren't sure whether she was on the phone, was texting, or making a call.
It sounded like to me she was either talking to someone or leaving a voicemail, but trying to communicate, not just staring at her phone.
Okay. And what did that phone look like?
I don't remember seeing her phone very well because she kept it at her lap and I could see the illumination from the screen, but I could not see the phone itself.
So at no time during this 20 minutes did you ever see a phone?
No.
And at no time did you later attempt to verify whether the phone was actually in use? Am I
No.
correct?
And I actually did hear the phone ringing as well.
Okay. Did you see her answer the phone?
No, I saw her. It seemed like to me she was making the call. I never heard her phone ring. I could just hear the call going out, like ringing from her end, not from a cell phone. It's like a receiving end, more like an outcalling end.
So,
You know when you have your phone on speakerphone?
yes, sir. So what you think you heard was a ringing as if her phone was on speakerphone in her lap, and she was trying to call somebody else.
Yes.
Okay. But you never heard the ringing, you never could determine whether anybody answered or she was actually ever talking to anybody.
That is correct.
Okay, got it. Detective, I just want to be sure, the only time that you yourself ever were surveilling Monica Sementilli, that you saw her with Mr. Baker, was on the 21st, is that right?
The 21st into the 22nd.
Okay. That was the only time of the times you surveilled her, that you saw them?
Together? Yes.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
You're welcome.
Anything further by the people?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Detective Anaya. You are excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Let's take our afternoon recess for 15 minutes. Be back in 15 minutes.